Hi, I'm Mike Ignatoski, the creator of the PurpleWolf basketball spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that aims to help you get more enjoyment out of your tabletop basketball projects by doing a lot of the work, if not all the work, of tracking your team and players' game stats and season stats, as well as team standings and schedules. By doing that, you'll get more time to play your games, have more fun, and maybe take on projects that you wouldn't otherwise take on. In this video, I'm going to show a step-by-step process of how to create one example of a custom league in the PurpleWolf basketball spreadsheet. Again, custom leagues can take a lot of different forms, but I'm going to show one example that's hopefully at least somewhat typical of a custom league. Specifically in this example, I'm going to create a custom league of NBA versus ABA champions. I'm going to have an ABA conference and an NBA conference, and each conference will have a single division with 4 historical teams in it. So let's see how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to assume you've downloaded the PurpleWolf spreadsheet as well as the PurpleWolf basketball reference helper data files. You're going to need both of those to do this. And this is what your screen should look like when you open up the PurpleWolf spreadsheet for the first time. You'll get this welcome form or welcome message with 4 menu buttons on it. And we're going to choose the green button to create a league. And it drops you to the league help page. This mentions a little bit about what the league's options are, but I'm going to close this, and we're going to essentially follow this column of step-by-step instructions. But I'm not going to be referring back to this each time, but this is where the instructions are. The first thing it says is start with a new copy of the spreadsheet, download the Excel basketball reference helper file, which I've got, and go to the league sheet. The next thing it says is click the delete league button. That's just if you're using a spreadsheet that you've already used before, but since we just downloaded this one, ours is going to be clear. You can always click that delete league just to be sure that everything's wiped out, or starting with a fresh slate in your spreadsheet. So let me go to my league sheet here. And now what I'm going to do is open up my basketball reference helper spreadsheet. And I'm doing that because my custom league is made up of historical teams, and obviously they have historical rosters. If your custom league has all fictitious teams or not ABA or NBA historical players, then you won't need to do this. You'll have to just enter all your roster players by hand. But I'm going to... Oops. Here it is. Sorry, I already had it open. So this is my basketball reference helper sheet. I'm not going to look into it right now because I don't need to, but I just want to make sure it's open, and then I'll minimize it. Okay, now we're ready to start building our league from the league worksheet. So like the creation of any league, the first place you start is here where it says start here, but the league mode. And what I'm going to be looking at is this custom mode down there, number 3, custom league. So I'm going to click in here, use my little drop down that pops up, and choose custom versus manual configuration. But don't let that scare you. Then it prompts me for enter the number of teams. So in my configuration that I showed, I had 8 different teams. So I'll put 8. And then it does a few things behind the scenes. And now it's telling me, one, that's important that I read and understand these instructions. But you can see one thing it did is number of teams, it put 8 up here. And what it's telling me to do now is to enter the list of my team names and team IDs starting in cell C14. So here's C, here's 14, so starting right here. You can see here it numbered 1 through 8 because that's the number of teams I told them I wanted in my league. Then it says leave the division column blank at this time. So this is the division column. We'll ignore that. We're just going to fill in the team name and the team ID. It says I can make changes later if I wanted to. It says after entering your team names and IDs, click the Validate League Settings button, this black one up here, and it will guide you through the remaining steps. And after each piece of required information is satisfied, it'll just keep pointing to the next step along the path. So at any time, if you want to restart your league or start over, you can, this says reset all, but it should be delete league. This will kind of delete everything, just like before we started this process. And then you can begin from step 1 of choosing your league mode again and going from there. And then it says at the bottom, note that later in the league configuration process, you will create and load or enter your team rosters. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. It sounds like a lot, but it really isn't a lot to remember. Pretty much it's put in your team name and team IDs, and then if you're not sure what to do, you click this black button and it'll guide you along the way. But don't worry about assigning any divisions. So I'm going to click OK. Now, so here's my names, or where I'm going to enter the names of my team. So I'm going to start. My first team was the 1969 ABA Oakland Oaks. So I'm going to write it here as Oakland Oaks 69. And I'll put as their ID. I think it can be anything from 2 to 4 characters. If you hover up here, it'll say 2, 3, or 4 characters, no spaces, and no special characters. So I'm just going to put Oak here. Go down here. My next team was the 1971 Utah Stars. 71. I'm just going to go with UT for Utah. Next, the 73 Indiana Pacers. So you get the idea. I'm going to stop the video and I'll pick this up when I'm done with my teams and we can see where it goes from there. Okay, I've almost got everything entered. All I have left is my last team here, my 75 Golden State Warriors. And I'm going to go over here, I'm going to enter their ID as just GS for Golden State. When I click enter here, you'll see that it detected that I had entered all my team names and team IDs, and now it puts it copies those team IDs over here in the team colors area for you to put team colors later on, and then shows me this other message. Your custom team list appears to be valid. The next step is to enter and or validate various league settings, including your league name, ID, sub-leagues, that's like conferences, and divisions. And when you click OK, the process of entering and validating these settings will begin. And after entering or correcting each item, click the black Validate League Settings button up here, and it will basically guide you to the next thing you got to do. So, okay. So the first thing it's telling me is your league ID is invalid. You better go fix that. So something between 2 to 10 characters. So I'll just say this is going to be again, this is all behind the scenes. NBA versus, let's call it NBA ABA. Now, I'm going to enter the name here because that's the next thing it's going to balk at me about. So I'm just going to call this NBA versus ABA. Now I'll click the black button. Now it's going to tell me the next thing that I need to do, which is invalid number of subleagues. Only values of 1 and 2 are valid. Right now it says it's NA. Please complete the league configuration and retry. So that kind of then directs me over here where it says the number of subleagues. Now, if you remember my picture, I had, 2 subleagues. I had an ABA conference and an NBA conference. So I'm going to, in here, choose 2 subleagues. And while I'm here, I might as well look at this next thing, which is the divisions per conference. So I'll just click this button and you can see. So now it's going to tell me I need to fix that divisions per subleague. Okay, and in my setup, I only had 1 division per subleague. I had 2 conferences, the ABA and the NBA, but each one only had 4 teams, and it was a single division. So this is, again, it's divisions per conference or per subleague, not total. So I only have 1 division per conference or per subleague. Like it. Okay, so now I've got that. Now I'll click my validate again. And now it guides me on to the next thing to do, which is missing subleague name. Fill in the subleague and division custom name table and retry. The table cells are located in column Q. So here's column Q. So it's basically in this table. And you can see it already filled in my league name here in this white rectangle, white cell. And I need to put in my L conference. Basically fill in the cells that don't have NA or not applicable. That's what that means. So I got to fill in these 4 cells. What's the name of my L conference? I got to close this. I'm just going to call that. That's basically when you look at your standings, the L means this will be on the left side. So I'm going to call that my ABA. And because I only have 1 division, I could also call that the ABA, but I'm just going to call it team, and you'll see why in a second. If I only have 1 division in a conference, just use team. And my R conference, or right, I'm going to put in NBA for that. And again, I'm just going to put team here, since I really don't have different division names. Okay, so now I'm back to clicking the black button again. Now I have invalid division value. It must be 2 characters in length. Please provide a division for each team in your league from the drop-down list and retry with the validate leagues. So what it's saying is, this looks okay, excuse me, but over here you can see it's selected. Now I have to assign my teams to the appropriate divisions. So I'll click OK, and you can see I put a little drop-down in here. Now you have 2 choices, L1 and R1, just like over here. So from my setup here, if they're an ABA team, I'm going to put that in the L1, and my NBA teams will be in the R1. So this will be L, 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 and similarly R for these NBA teams. Okay, so now I've got that done. Let's try our favorite black button one more time. Okay, so we did a couple of little backflips behind the scenes, and now it's telling us that there's no roster data found. So the roster locking, I need to unlock the roster sheet to enter the roster data and retry. So we passed the league sheet, now we're on to the roster sheet. So let's see what we got to do for this. So I clicked OK there, and it shows me my next message of how to enter or load team rosters. So step 1, unlock the roster sheet, which is this pink unlock button up here, and enter the roster data using any of these methods. A, for historical teams, you can use the load historical team roster button, the green, right up here, and that's what I'm going to use. B, if you want to, for historical players, you may choose the copy-paste player sheet, which I'll show that just to demonstrate. But for instructions, you can also see on the league help sheet, it tells you how to do that. And that's if you had historical players, but they're not on their typical team, meaning maybe you have all-star teams, or you had your own draft and you mixed all the players up. So that's what this is talking about. And see, for non-historical teams or rosters, you have to enter them into this grid and be sure you start in the top row. That's if you have fictitious players, or maybe you have international players or something that aren't found in these historical ABA and NBA rosters. And here it says important, not all columns are required. So you need to put in at least these. You need a team ID, the player ID. In general, you should put in first, last, player name, primary position. You can ignore this multi-team list, but and if you're going to track minutes in your league, you should also put in this average minutes per game if you want to try to follow a certain number of minutes per game per player. And this stint you can also ignore in a custom league. Okay, so as I said, for this example, I have historical teams. So I want to just take advantage of the basketball reference data and load those rosters to start with. So right now it says my roster data is locked. So I'm going to click this pink button and it'll unlock them. And it just tells me they're unlocked. And while they're unlocked, you can easily delete a player by double clicking this cell in the column B, which is right here, where it kind of says delete. And that's helpful maybe later when we want to tweak our rosters, if we want to remove some players that we don't have in our game. It's an easy way to do it. I'll show you that. Okay, so the first team that I want to load is my 1969 Oakland Oaks in the ABA. So I'm going to click this green button, and up here in this drop down is my league team name. So if I click this, you'll see here are all my 8 teams that I entered. So I'm going to start with my Oakland Oaks. It doesn't matter what order you do them, but I'm just doing them in the order that I put them in. So if I have Oakland Oaks 1969 ABA champs, so that's just which team I want to associate the data I'm going to load with. And down here are the data that comes from the helper file, the basketball reference helper file. So I'm going to go here to find 1969. So here that is. And when I click that, you'll see it combines the ABA and NBA teams in this big list over here. So here are the ABA teams are at the top, and then the NBA teams are at the bottom. So I'm going to pick in the ABA the Oakland Oaks. And it'll show them up here. And when I have my historical team chosen that I want to match up with the league the team in my league, I'll click this green load button. And it gives me a confirmation. Are you sure you want to load the 69 Oakland Oaks historical roster for your team, the Oakland Oaks 69? And I'm going to confirm. I'll say yes. So when I do that, it goes and reads the data out of that helper file and drops it in here in the blink of an eye. And it tells me success. This has been loaded into your custom league. It says you can now load additional historical rosters for your other teams, or you can click done if you want to close this window. Okay, so you can actually click done and then come back and do more if you wanted to. I'm going to do that for a second here. So I want to just say, this is just saying I might want to modify some stuff. We'll get back to this. But I just want to show you this for one team. So this is what it brings in. This ID here, although here it kind of matched what was in the reference file, but this is the ID that I entered on my league sheet. The player ID to all the rest of this data comes from the basketball reference helper file. And what I want to kind of say here is, it may be in my game, whatever basketball game I have, maybe I have all these players in my game and maybe I don't. But I'm just going to quote, well, if I say this, I don't know, let's just say this Henry Logan guy, I don't have in my league because he didn't only played a couple games. I'm not sure that's true or not, but let's just pretend it is. So what I'm going to do here is if I want to delete him out of my league because I don't really have the card or whatever for this player on my team, so I'm not going to play him. So that means I'm going to kind of follow this where it says, I can double click here and I'll be prompted to delete. So Henry Logan, I'll go over here and double click. Then it says, are you sure you want to delete Henry Logan? This can't be undone. I'll say, yeah, I'm sure. And then it deletes Henry Logan. So that, depending on how your game works and how many players they printed or made for your particular game, you may want to do that. Especially if you had a case where you actually had the same player that played on multiple teams. Like this, if this is Memphis, or whoever this is, I have to go look. But you could have the same player on two teams, and you want to fix that up. Okay, so let me go back to just to do one more of these to show. So now I want to go back and load my next team. I'm going to pick the Utah Stars of 1971. So I click them, find 1971. Here are my Utah Stars, and I click load again. Do I want to load them? Yes, I do. So it drops in these 15 Utah Stars and tells me the same message. So again, now you could either go and edit your list now if you wanted to. If I wanted to delete a couple guys, I could, or I could actually change their position if I wanted to, or maybe if I want to mess around with their actual minutes, that's up to you also. But so you can do that now, or you can load all your teams and then go tweak your rosters. It's up to you. But for now, I'm just going to stop the video and load the rest of my rosters, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, fast forward, I've now added all those 8 historical rosters to my roster sheet. And I've also deleted some guys off some teams. I probably should delete more, but for this example, this is fine. So I've basically got my rosters, what I think is okay to start with, or at least to begin checking. I deleted the guys I don't have in my game, and I'm ready to move on. So what I want to do now is click this validate and lock roster data button up here. And what that does is basically does that, just validates this and tries to lock it if it's valid. But let's see what happens. So I do it and I get this message. It says duplicate player ID found on roster sheet. And it gives me the ID and it says aborting. Please correct and retry. Duplicate player IDs are not permitted in a custom league. They're really not permitted in any league. But there are 2 options to correct this. If you want to treat these 2 players as different or unique players in your league, then change the ID and lineup name or player name for one or both so that they're different. Or you could also delete one of them from the roster sheet. So if we look at what we've got here, this is just telling me that they're not done yet. That's okay. Okay, let's look what happened here. So what it's showing me is Rick Barry. Before we delve into this, I want to right here on the player ID, see how it shows this little filter symbol, and that's what's hiding all the other rows. You can see that only 2 of the however many 150 or however many rows are here. It's just showing these Rick Barry ones because that's what's causing the problem right now. Now, one thing about the validation process is as soon as it finds something that's invalid, it stops looking. So don't think that if you get this message that there might not be more of the same situation. So that's just how it works. So as soon as it finds something invalid, it stops doing the validation process. So it's hard to tell how many things are actually wrong. But anyway, so Rick Barry, he played for the Oakland Oaks and he played for the 75 Warriors. But we're going to But we want them in this league for both teams because that's just how this league's going to work. So what I want to do is I need to fix these IDs like the message said. Have different IDs and different player names. So over here, what I'll just do is I'm going to just double click. And for the Oakland one, I'll just put an O at the end of it. And for this golden, I could leave this one alone, but just for consistency, I'll put a GS at the end of this one for Golden State. And on his name, what I'm going to do here is say this is Rick O. I could, however you want to do. I could put Rick O'Berry for Oakland. I could put it at the end and put a little O if I wanted to. I'll do this. I'm just going to put a Rick dash Oak here and a Rick dash GS. Oh, jeez. So now they're different. And this way, when I see them in the league leaders or something, I see a name, I'll know exactly which Rick Barry we're talking about. This is just an example of how to do it. You can do it, again, as I said, you could put something at the end of their name. So now when I'm going to click this validate and lock again, I get somebody else now. And now I get Donnie Freeman. And maybe on this one, I'm just going to click OK on it. Same kind of thing. He was on the Utah Stars in 71 and the Pacers in 73. So I'm going to just put this U and this I. But here, yeah, maybe I'll do it like I said before, just like that. Oops. Again, there's no rules of how you got to make them different, but you just have to make them different. Let me try this one more time. Some guy, Red Robbins, who was on Utah and the Kentucky Colonels. But you get the idea. I'm not going to make you sit through all these, but this is just a kind of something you have to do if you're going to use, historical rosters from teams and you use different teams from different years. This happens more likely than you think. It's just like with any sport, guys they move around, and doesn't take much to find somebody that was on two of these same teams that you pick. So this is just part of the roster validation process. So I'm just going to stop the video and finish correcting these and then move on to the next step. Okay, well, I only had to do one more player, and now when I click the validate and lock, it passed the test. So now you can see it says locked up here, and now my message, it says your roster data is valid and it will now be locked. If I needed to make more changes, I'd have to unlock it and then proceed to validate and lock it again to make sure it still passed the test. But the last part here where it says if your team rosters are complete, then go back to the league sheet and click the validate league settings button, the black one, to continue configuring your league. So that's what we're going to do. So OK, back to the league sheet, click the black button. And it's always exciting when it jumps around, but it says great news, your standings have been configured for your league. Let's take a look. This is just see if it looks like what we want it to look like. Here's our league. Here are our two sub-leagues, our two conferences. We had a left ABA, a right NBA, and here are all the ABA teams just as I entered them, and similarly for the NBA teams as I entered them. That looks good. So I'm going to say OK. Now it says, telling me that your league appears to be valid, which is always nice to hear. The next step is to lock your league settings. And when you lock your league settings, that's kind of locking the configuration of your league. So that means you can't change the number of teams, the team names, the team IDs, what division or sub-conference that they're in. You can't change any player IDs or player names. I will say I have, for a couple people, corrected or changed some player names or team names that they accidentally just misspelled when they created their league and then got locked. But in general, it doesn't allow the user to do it. But if it really comes up and it's bothering you, you can send it to me and I can fix it for you, or I'll try to. Some things that on the bottom of this that says things you can change. You can change team colors, which we didn't even assign any yet, but that's okay. You could change a player's position. You could add games to your schedule, add a player to a roster, or change a player's team. So those things are all allowed during your league season. But you need to lock it to kind of move on to the next step so you can start using your score sheet with your league. So at the end, we're going to say, or I'm going to say, yes, I'm ready to lock my league settings and move ahead. Awesome, it's almost done. You can click OK, and it's going to then configure the score sheet to work in my custom league mode. And it says important custom league information. You must have at least one game on your schedule in order to play a game, which makes sense. And you should have default lineups set up in the league lineup sheet. Okay. Let's let it do its thing. Now it's setting the score sheet. And you can see up here in the upper left, it sets the league mode, whereas the score sheet mode, so it shows that it's league and custom. Okay. Click the game ID to load a game. So it kind of gets a little ahead of itself because we don't have any lineup, so we can't do it yet. All right, it's looking good. Here are some final considerations. Like they already warned us, we need some default starting lineups, and you need to put at least one game on the schedule. But the score sheet is ready. Okay, so this is it kind of drops us here on the league lineup sheet. So let's see what we got to do here. Okay, before I go on to the next part, I want to go back and show one more thing with the rosters that I didn't show, which was how to use the basketball reference helper data file to copy one player at a time as opposed to a whole team at a time. So I just have this little other custom league, just two teams, my all-star team and your all-star team. So if I go to the rosters sheet, which is where I'm at, let's see how this would work. So the first thing I need to do is unlock this. So unlock my rosters. That gets ready for me to enter rosters one way or another. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is go to my helper data file. So here is that PW B-ball ref data spreadsheet. So here are the different tabs. I want to go to the roster sheet because that's where the players are. And maybe what I should do is make this a different size so I can see both of these. Like that. Okay. Maybe make it a little smaller. Okay. And then maybe it's the same with this. I should try to tweak it a little bit. Hopefully it's not too small. You can still see it. Okay. So in my league here, I had my IDs were MAS for my all-star and your all-star team. So let's just say I've got Kareem. So I want to put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from the 72 Bucks on my team. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over here to the helper sheet and turn on this copy player mode. So I'm going to click here and this should be on. Then I want to go back to my PurpleWolf sheet and click this paste player mode and turn that on. So now I have my unlocked rosters, the paste mode's on and copy mode's on. Now I want to find Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I want to use these filters here to find him. So you can just go in here and start typing his name. And you can see here, whoops. Jeez, if I could do it right. Okay, this is just going to show me the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar rows. And here are all his seasons from 70 to 89. So let's say I want the 72 one. So what I want to do is click on his name over here first. So I click on his, make sure you click in this column. So if I click here, you'll see how it basically copies and highlights all these columns of data. His player ID, first, last, name, position, this multi-team that we don't really care about, but it's also his minutes per game. So once that's kind of in this animated copy or selected mode, I go over to my own PurpleWolf sheet and I click, make sure I'm at the top, click in the first blank player name row, and it'll paste them in there. And over here I would put my team ID. So that's the team that I want him on. And it's as simple as that. Then I'd come back over here, maybe switch this filter, maybe hit clear, and then maybe I want to pick Oscar Robertson is also on this team. So I could start typing his name. Here he is, Oscar Robertson. So here he is from 61 to 74. You can see he's on the Royals and the Bucks, but I can pick any year that I wanted to, but I'll pick 62 since that's the year I think he averaged a triple-double. So I'll pick that one. So you just click on his name and click over here on this name, and it'll put him in. And that's what I wanted to show as far as copying, pasting one player at a time. It's a little bit tedious, but it has some perks, to be able to use these filters to find your player, and it does, it already gives them an ID. It makes sure that their name's spelled right, and if you care about these minutes played or things like that, that's helpful. So you can decide whether that's something you think is worth doing or not, but I wanted to show that as an alternative. Obviously the other option is just to go into the spreadsheet directly and type in the values. If I just wanted to put myself in there, oops, I didn't finish there. But if I'm going to do that, I need to turn this off. And I could put myself in here. And I didn't play much. So that's the other way. And you could also, if you have these in some other spreadsheet, maybe you could paste in your names. But however you want to get them in for a custom roster, those are your options. You can, as I said, if you have a historical team, that's the easiest to copy them with one click of the mouse. If you got all-star or mixed up, you can do it this way, or you can just type them in. So that's what I wanted to show about how to fill out the roster in a different way. Okay, let's pick up then where we were with our main example here. We could do a lineup. I'm going to not do that. Well, I guess I'll show one of the lineups right now. So we're on the lineup sheet. Sorry. Here are all the teams. They're all collapsed right now. If you pick a team, it'll expand that team. All you need to do is worry about this primary lineup. If you click on the word primary, it'll launch the lineup editor, just like it says over here in the little help picture. So click here. Here's everybody that's on the roster. And you can see here's my Rick G.S. Berry that we had customized to make sure it didn't conflict with the Oakland Oaks Rick Berry. So I don't know this team that well, but I would say Yeah. I think Jamal Wilkes started too, so let's go with those two. I just need Clifford Ray. I think he played a lot. Anyway, so I'll say these are my starters. Then I'm going to take all the rest of these guys and put them on my bench. So I'll click this triple arrow thing down here. And there we go. The thing I want to bring up is this bench limit. And this is set on the config sheet down here. So before you do all your lineups, you want to make sure that you have this bench limit set up that way that you want it for your league. You can change it if you want to during your league. That's okay, but if it's going to affect your lineups, you should get it set first. But here they only had 12 guys, so it's not going to matter unless I made my bench limit only 6, which I'm not going to do. So that's pretty. You can then adjust if you want these in a certain order up here. You can adjust them. If you want to have I want to have my point guard, then my shooting guard, and kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions. You can use these buttons over here to move your guys around. Same thing with a bench if you wanted to. But I'm just going to save this. And once it does, you'll see now it makes this bold and puts these 3 stars so that if I were to collapse all these, I could see who I have a lineup done for and who I don't. The next thing I want to show is the schedule. So let's take a look at the schedule. So one of the things that is up to you as the user when you have a custom league is the schedule. It's all up to you. So a couple things on the schedule are these yellow ones are basically like the required fields. The green ones, not so much. It'll either figure them out or they're optional. So again, there's a lot of little red triangle cells here, and you can hover on these, and it'll tell you some things. But like this season game number, it is a required, like it says in it. The game number must increase as the season progresses. In general, you should just start with 1 and go from there. So I'm just going to put in 2 games here. Whoops. This is important to know. Before you do anything, you'll get this message if you don't unlock it. So you first have to unlock your schedule, kind of like your roster. So I'll unlock it. And while it's unlocked, you can't load any games in the score sheet. So that's what it's telling me. So and that's now here. It says the status. It's unlocked. I'm going to put, this is my first game and my second game. This game type, right now it really only will let you put an R, but I'm hoping in the upcoming versions I'll have it so you can put in, it'll allow for postseason games. But right now it's just R for regular season. If you leave it blank, it automatically puts in an R. The game ID is something that you have to put in also, but let's do that last. So in this first game, I'm just going to say I have Golden State versus Boston. Let me do this as an example. So I'm going to intentionally do that incorrectly. So these are your IDs. And then in my game ID, oh, yeah, I know that. It has to be unique. You can see that. So it can be as simple as the same as this season game number. That is the simplest form, is just put a 1 or a 2, whatever. Or if I wanted to, maybe I wanted to say, I might want to add something like, oh, this is Golden State versus Boston, just so I know what it is. It's up to you, however you want to do it. But this thing's it's saying it's unlocked, so it won't load it in the score sheet, which I know I should probably fix it so it doesn't even show that message. Okay, so now I did that. I'm going to go to the next one. I'll put in 2, and this is going to be Utah versus the New York team. So this is Utah and New York Knicks. So now what I'm going to do is click the lock. This is kind of like the validate button, and it will hopefully fill these in or tell me if I have any problems. And here it's telling me I have an invalid visitor team ID of GSW in game ID, this one, which makes sense because if I remember on my league sheet, my ID for Golden State was just GS. So I have to just stick with these IDs. So let me go back to my schedule and fix that. Let's try to lock it now. It says success. So you see what it did. It just tells me that I locked it. Okay. So what happened there is it automatically knew that GS was the Golden State Warriors 75, that this was the Celtics 69, etc. So it fills in all the teams, and it also fills in these game numbers. It knows that it figures out that it's the first game number for Golden State, it's the first game for Utah, and that's what it uses these for. It's going to put them in order of these numbers, and that's how it knows which game number it is for which team. And that's basically how you do the schedule. You don't really need to put this date. This is more for historical stuff as far as scheduled game date. But that's how you get something on the schedule. Maybe I should explain better this message I'm getting on when I click on the game ID. So let me do this one more time, and so it makes sense. Let me unlock it and just put a third game in here. So I'll leave this blank now, and you'll see what I mean. It'll fill it in automatic. But when I click this game ID, I get this message, and it says the game ID cell is not locked, and no game will be loaded into the score sheet. So the issue is when you want to load a game in your score sheet, you click on this game ID cell also. So it's just trying to figure out what you're trying to do. It doesn't know that you're trying to enter in a schedule. Before, it never used to give a message, and then, or in my other spreadsheets, it didn't give a message, and then people would leave this unlocked and then couldn't figure out why they couldn't load a game into the schedule. So that's why when you click in this cell, you get that message when you're entering your schedule. So I'm trying to figure out a better way to do it, but it's a challenge with trying to serve kind of two purposes here. So that's why it does that. And I'll just want to explain that it's not really a bug, but it's really trying to inform the user when they're trying to load a game into the score sheet and it doesn't work. This is typically why. So, but anyway, with that, I'm going to not wrap it up, but I want to say that does kind of conclude what it takes to create your league, create a custom league, even though it doesn't cover the many different variations of custom leagues. But hopefully you get an idea of the basic things that's required, and how it's different from the historical leagues, with the main thing of, you have to enter your teams and to assign them divisions, give them IDs, and then somehow fill in your rosters, whether you got historical ones, which is easy pretty much, or if you got to add them one player at a time, which is a little more work, but I'll say it's work well worth it. Once you get it done, it'll pay off for sure. So anyway, before I finish this video, I wanted to mention or show one more segment here of some settings within the spreadsheet that you'll want to look at before you start, I'll say, playing your games for keeps. So it's good maybe to play a couple practice games or parts of practice games and see how you want certain features to work, or what ones you want to use or not use. So that's what this next part of the video will be discussing, are some features and settings that you want to look at to figure out how you want those to work in your league. Okay, so you've got a league created in PurpleWolf. So what do you need to do now before you start playing games? I suggest there's a few settings you want to look at before you get going on the gameplay. And they're located in a few different places. I have listed here the options sheet, there's the config sheet, the league sheet, and then the lineups sheet. So let's take a look at those. On the config sheet, which is this, there's a few things you can look at. And these are at the bottom of the config sheet. Above this, there are some other stat settings you can set, but those aren't as important to set before you start playing. Right here, this one, this maximum number of bench players, as shown here. That's important to set before you do your lineups. That's an important number to set, which determines what's the maximum number of players you're going to allow on your bench. The spreadsheet will allow up to 10. I don't know how if NBA has official rules, but typically it seems like they have 7 or 8. But you can decide how you want to set that up for your league. And these other two below it have to do with if you're tracking minutes played. It's important that these are correct. I believe 12 and 5 are the current NBA values. Maybe that's what they've always been, but either way, make sure they're the way you want them to be. Over here are some, I'll say maybe less critical, but still things you want to get set right, and they all have to do with fouls, both in determining the bonus for regulation and overtime, as well as personal fouls for foul trouble and players fouling out. So that's something you should take a look at on the config sheet. There's several other things on the options sheet, and I'll point out especially numbers 4, 7, and 8, with 4 being basically, are you going to use minutes played? Are you going to track this as validate? Maybe I think it will say track and validate maybe on the new version, but that's important. If you're going to track those minutes played values, then you need to set this option to on, number 4. The other 2, 7, and 8 have to do with the event logger, and they have basically those are saying if you're going to credit somebody with a blocked shot, then do you want it to force you to identify the opponent that will get a missed field goal? And similarly, if you're going to give somebody credit for a steal, do you want the spreadsheet to force you to identify the opponent that should be docked with a turnover because that's who they stole the ball from? There are other settings on this options sheet. Some have to do with just whether it shows you alerts at certain situations and things, and those are good to look over, set, and those are other things where you could also set them as you go. Maybe you want to try it one way or try it a different way. Not to say you can't change these number 4, 7, and 8 during your league season, but I would recommend it's best not to. But that's up to you. On the league sheet, that's where you configure your team colors that are mostly used on the score sheet. Obviously, those don't affect any stats or results, but they make things look cool. In the future, I'm hoping to add the ability here to just set a home arena for each team, but that will also be another option, but it's not available in the initial version. Lastly is on the league or on the lineup sheet. This is actually the lineup editor that you can launch from the league lineup sheet. But the important thing I'm pointing out here is this bench limit, which is enforced in the lineup editor. It comes from the config sheet, and that's where the maximum number of players on your bench comes from. So you want to first set it on your config sheet before you do your lineups. And in general, the way the PurpleWolf deals with the rosters is, you have on your lineup, you have the 5 starters, who's on your bench, and then basically who's left over here on the roster that's not a starter or on the bench is considered effectively a did not dress player. So they're still on the roster, but if they're not listed in the starter or bench when you start your game, you won't be able to put them in the game. So it's important to know what your default lineup is. And I should also mention again that when you load a lineup into the score sheet, you can change who's on your bench. You can change your lineup before you start the game. But once you start it, you can't change it. So those are the things I wanted to cover as far as settings before you get going playing your league games. That wraps up this PurpleWolf basketball spreadsheet video. Thanks for watching, And don't forget to box out.